Hello and welcome back to my IVF pregnancy and motherhood saga. In today's video, we're going to talk about a topic that I've been looking so forward to talk about, which is my birth story. Yay, we're finally making it to this point 2 months after the actual event. So without further ado, let's get started. Before I get into the details of the actual birth, I want to, set up the context for this whole story. So first of all, I am 38. I was 37 when I got pregnant, 38 when I gave birth. My pregnancy was an IVF pregnancy, and although I am a first-time mom, my pregnancy fell into the older mom category because I was over the age of 35. Different OBGYNs have different protocols for this type of situation, so the things I'm going to talk about refer strictly to my case and to my experience, and please don't take them as a general rule, because your doctor may think otherwise. So right from the beginning of my experience with my OBGYN, we knew that I'm going to be induced at 39 weeks. This was the original plan. My due date was September 2nd, so the plan was to schedule an induction for August 26th. Also, for the last month of my pregnancy, I had appointments booked with my doctor's office throughout the whole month, weekly. So every week there was an appointment. I even had an appointment booked for August 31st, even though I knew that in theory I would have the induction scheduled for a day before that. So the original plan was to have an induced vaginal birth, although I was of course open to a C-section if the need would ever arise. At my 32 weeks appointment, the ultrasound revealed the fact that the baby had already turned head down and he was in the perfect position to give birth. So at that point, of course, there was no indication for a C-section. Also, I didn't have any medical condition that would indicate that I need a C-section. So the plan remained in place. Around the first or second week of August, my doctor went ahead and scheduled my induction for August 26th with the hospital, and everything showed that our plan was going to stay in place because I was not showing any signs of early labor. And also my doctor told me that for first pregnancies, it's more typical that you go beyond your due date and not go into labor sooner. At my appointment on August 19th, the doctor told me the details of the plan, and it would go like this. On August 25th, which was the date of my next appointment, a week later, I would go into the office and they would place a Foley bulb inside my cervix, and that would have the purpose of kickstarting the dilation of the cervix. And the plan was that over a few hours, this dilation would have gone to like 3 centimeters, and then I would go to my scheduled induction the next day with a 3 centimeter dilation. That was the plan. I was kind of scared that this would make me go into labor sooner because, of course, like a Foley bulb is not a timed bomb, like your body can react to it in certain ways or in other ways. So it can take more or less hours for you to get dilated, and who knows, I thought maybe I would start even having contractions, and maybe this would happen while I'm still working, because the August 25th I was actually still going to work. My maternity leave would kickstart on August 26th, like the day of my induction was actually the first day of my maternity leave, or this was the plan. That week before the induction, I made sure everything was in order. My hospital bag was already packed, so everything was taken care of. On Thursday of that week, I had a package shipped from my coworkers with a little baby gift, some baby items that I love to death and I'm already using. And also they had worked with a Houston-based bakery. Mind you, my coworkers are spread all over the United States. So they had worked with a Houston-based bakery to have them deliver a package with baby glazed cookies in the same color scheme as the baby items in the baby package, and to arrive the same day. So that day, that Thursday, I received these gifts, and then the same day they actually did a surprise virtual baby shower. Like, they tricked me into thinking I was about to go on a work call, and it ended up being the whole 2 teams that I'm working with throwing me a virtual baby shower. So that was super sweet. That last weekend, because we knew it would be the last weekend ever of my husband and I just being the 2 of us, we planned very, very nice date. We went to this Italian restaurant. It's called D'Amico's here in Houston. Very nice. We had dinner. I had my manicure and pedicure done the next day on Sunday. So everything was ready to go. I have to admit that having my maternity leave start on the exact day of my scheduled induction was a bit hazardous. Don't be me. Just try to plan your maternity leave to start maybe a week before your due date, or a week before your scheduled induction or C-section, because you never know what can happen. And sure enough, we are on Monday, August 22nd. I was very slammed at work because it was my last week before my leave. I sat down on the computer at 8 a.m. and I got up at like almost 8 p.m. Then we had dinner and we watched the first episode of House of Dragon, which is the prequel of Game of Thrones. After we watched the show, we started getting ready for bed. My doctor had told me from the very first appointment to monitor my blood pressure. Although I didn't have any signs of preeclampsia, my urine samples were always super clear, no protein in my urine, no nothing. But it was always a little bit on the high side, still in range, but on the high side. So on that Monday, August 22nd, after we watched the show, I was like, let me just take my blood pressure, because, you know, I was feeling a little bit anxious. I don't know. So I take my blood pressure and it's 142 with 90. My instructions were, if it's over 140 with 90, call the night nurse and receive instructions of what to do. So I was like, okay, let me just relax for 15 minutes and take it again. And I take my blood pressure again in 15 minutes and it's 143 with 93. And I was like, okay, it's time to call the night nurse at my doctor's office. Before calling the night nurse, I'm like, okay, let's go to the bathroom and let's pee. And sure enough, the pee wasn't stopping. And I'm like, this is wrong. This is not pee. This is like literally, I cannot control this. I had been having a little bit of like a liquid discharge, but like super trickling the last, let's say, couple of weeks. But I was like, yeah, it's just discharge. Doctor was like, yeah, it's just discharge. Like, it's normal in pregnancy, whatever. And so when this unstoppable pee happened, I'm like, okay, this is nothing like my discharge. This is not pee. I think my water is breaking. So, okay, I put a new like penny liner thingy. I leave the bathroom. I call the night nurse and I tell her the situation. And as I was talking to the night nurse, I was like, actually, this thing won't stop. Like it's gushing as I'm talking to you. And she's like, well, okay, seems like your water broke and seems like you're gonna be having a baby tonight. So she said, okay, pack your bags, don't rush. It's not like an emergency situation, but you are going to the hospital tonight. Pack your bag and just go. She said they were going to let the hospital know that I'm coming, so they would be waiting for me in the emergency room and triage and everything's gonna be okay. So from the moment that she told me, you're gonna have a baby tonight, I started completely freaking out because, the reality of it just hit me. I'm like, this is it. This is really going to happen. I have no idea what it will turn out to be. Life is never going to be the same again when we come back home from this mini trip. And I was like, actually a little bit panicking. My bag was already prepared. I asked Ivan to prepare his bag. And also I had to, take some last minute things like my chargers and my camera and even my work laptop, because I was like, what if they need something? Like, I wasn't supposed to be on maternity leave until 3 days from now or 4 days from now. Like, I need to get my laptop. With shaky hands, I write to my supervisors on Teams. It was like, I think it was, by that time, it was 10:20 p.m., something like that. And I messaged them on Teams and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, my water broke. So I guess I'm having this baby earlier. I set up my out of office. I slammed my laptop closed. I put it in my backpack and I'm like, okay, let's change and go to the hospital. Problem is that as soon as I got up from the chair, the gushes started again. So I was in this situation in which I was in the bathroom, but like liquid was gushing out of me, so I couldn't do any move because as soon as I was getting up from the toilet, there was more liquid. So I was stuck in my bathroom. But there was a solution to this because I had my trusted, always adult diapers that I had purchased for my hospital bag for postpartum, actually, for the postpartum bleed. So I'm like, okay, let me just put this thing on. And sure enough, that thing was enough to contain the gushes, and it was absorbent, and I could like function and actually make it to the car. So I get in the car, I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, it's happening. Ivan calls his parents, it's happening. We get to the hospital. The hospital is like 15 minutes away from our house. There was no traffic, of course, because it was nighttime. By the way, I gave birth at the Women's Hospital of Texas, which is in the medical center, which is pretty close to Midtown, our neighborhood. So around 11 p.m. we make it to the hospital. They have valet parking, so the valet person takes our car. We go into the emergency room. There was nobody there, no other people waiting. It was just the staff waiting for us. And I get put into a triage room immediately. They give me my hospital gown and they hook me up to all kinds of monitors to monitor my blood pressure. They hook some monitor system over my belly. There were monitors in the room monitoring baby's heart rate and maybe even blood pressure, but maybe not, just the heart rate. Anyway. So we're here at the Women's Hospital of Texas. And it is not the day of my induction, but 3 days before that. So yeah.
What happened?
My water broke. But you know, like in the movies when like you create a puddle under yourself, like that happened. So I guess my out of office was put 3 days earlier than we was supposed to, and here we are.
Yes, so.
Wait, what the hell? This thing is killing me. Help. Look at my hand. Okay, to be continued. Then they put an IV in my arm, and I think it took them a couple of attempts to achieve this because the first attempt resulted in a busted vein. But it's okay, I guess. Other than this vein, which is like super good for blood tests and stuff like that, my arms are really like not very offering in terms of visible veins, but it's okay. And then we waited for a labor and delivery room to become available for us. That happened after maybe 2 to 4 hours, if I'm not wrong. Like my memory is already a bit hazy, but I don't remember being too annoyed or like the wait being too long. So the labor and delivery room is obviously the room where you have most of your labor and also the delivery of your baby. By the way, when I had arrived at the hospital, despite having lost quite a bit of liquid, I was at 0 dilation. Like there was no sign that labor was anywhere near started. But the problem is that losing your fluid or losing most of your fluid is like a time-ticking bomb. Like you have 24 hours to deliver your baby after this without a risk of infection. So this was what dictated everything that followed in my birth journey, let's call it this way. When I got to labor and delivery, or maybe even before that, they gave me a pill called Cytotec. Cytotec is a medication that is destined to start the dilation of your cervix. Every dose of this pill is supposed to be taken every 4 hours. You can take up to like, I think 4 doses until getting to the, next stage or something stronger. In my case, I think I had 2 doses of Cytotec before the doctor decided to put me on Pitocin. I think around 3 a.m. I started to have contractions. In the beginning, they were more like period cramps, and they were like maybe 4 minutes apart, and then they started being more and more painful and more closer together. And I resisted with contractions and without an epidural for, I think, under 3 hours. So I got my epidural at 6 a.m. and I think I hadn't even gotten the second dose of Cytotec, let alone Pitocin. I was not going to be on Pitocin and without an epidural. That was not in my plan. And so I got the epidural at around 6 a.m. and everything became way chiller after that. At that point, I think I was 1 centimeter dilated. And yes, I know there are a lot of people who want to go unmedicated, and you know, maybe my 1 centimeter dilation without an epidural seems laughable, but I am someone who hates pain, and an epidural was always in my plan. And I had actually asked my doctor, when is the earliest that I can get my epidural? And she was like, girl, you can get it as soon as you walk into the hospital. You don't need to wait at all. I wanted to, you know, see how long I resist without it, because getting the epidural pretty much means you're tied up to the bed because you become almost numb from waist down. But, you know, I was like, okay, let's try. Anyway, so I made it 3 hours. Also, because my plan was to get an epidural, I wasn't supposed to eat or drink anything but clear drinks from the moment I got to the hospital. So yeah, the morning came, so of course I couldn't order any breakfast, but they did get me some popsicles, a lot of popsicles and water, and so I was supposed to go on that. Later, I think I got some bone broth, which was extremely tasty, but also I suspect that it was made from, you know, those better than bouillon concoctions that come in a jar. Anyway, it was tasty. I liked it. By the way, I could not sleep at all that first night because first we were in triage. Then I got contractions for 3 hours and I couldn't sleep through those. Then, okay, I did get my epidural, but you know, the morning was starting and like I was busy texting people and messaging my coworkers, and I think I even emailed a client from my phone. So I was doing all of that, and of course I was excited. So no, I did not get any sleep at all. Fast forward to 11 a.m. I think I was 5 centimeters dilated, and the nurses were actually joking. I mean, not joking, but they were like, oh, I think this baby's gonna come by lunchtime because you're progressing really well and really quickly. I'm like, girl, okay, cool. Seems cool to me. And of course, I was getting more and more excited.
Update. I still have a belly. It is, I guess, 12 hours later. And we are in the labor and delivery room. And I got my epidural. When was that? At like 6 a.m.? Never mind. Oh, okay. So 6 a.m. I got my epidural. I was 1 centimeter dilated. But the pain was so bad. Like, imagine like your worst period cramp, but like 10 times worse. I don't know. I just didn't want to deal with it. So they was so chill, and it's still chill. And we are, as of an hour ago, 5 centimeters dilated. I had to up my dose, like my epidural, like maybe 3 or 4 times since I started, because like sometimes like a cramp just like creeps out and like but other than that, it's good, apart from the fact that I'm freaking out about the imminence of the situation and the irreversibility of the change. So yeah, we're excited to meet baby, little baby. I don't know what else to say. We want to see baby.
Baby. You look so deadly from here.
Deadly? I hope my booty doesn't show. Okay, so P.S. I did not sleep at all. Like, nada, niente, nada at all. Like, sleepless night. I want to share a thought. So earlier, my doctor came to check on me, and given how I am like this with this epidural situation, which means I can't really move that much, and they check you, like you have this feeling of like you're a sheep or a cow that like they, you know, they assist in giving birth to baby, I guess, sheep or cow. And just like, I don't know, it gives me these vibes of like you're like it's all very primal, very like animalic, I guess. So yeah, at the end of the day, we're humans, but we're just animals with a slightly more developed brain.
And then I get to 6 centimeters in, I think, maybe at the 1 or 2 p.m. checkup, 6 centimeters. And then for the longest time, I stay at 6 centimeters. In the afternoon, the nurses started putting me in like different positions. Of course, my mobility was very limited and I could not sit or stand because I was hooked to the epidural and also my IV and everything. So they put me into all these positions that were meant to make the baby go down and start engaging and also stimulate my dilation. You know, so I was like on a side with a pillow between my thighs, and then on the other side they were turning me every once in a while.
I'm not in the most comfortable state right now.
No, I think you need a nap.
Yeah, my neck hurts, my arm hurts, and I'm bored.
It's nappy time.
No, I'm bored.
Bored, baby, nappy time.
And at some point, I think maybe it was, I don't even know, 7, 8 p.m. I'm bullshitting right now because I don't remember the exact times. But in the evening, one of the nurses comes and checks me up and says like, oh my God, you're at 8 centimeters, only 2 to go. I'm like, yay!
So,
Yeah.
bedside confessions.
Bedside diaries. Bedridden diaries.
Bedridden diaries movie. Epidural diaries.
Yeah, so
I like it like this.
I think an hour ago we were at like 8.
8 plus.
Yeah, and so we're expecting to be fully dilated 10 p.m.
10 at 10.
10 and 10. 10 centimeters. And then my doctor would prefer that I give it another like hour after that for the baby to like fully use the force of gravity to come fully down on his own. And then it's push time.
And then at around 10 p.m. my doctor comes. By the way, my doctor was on call that day. She had a hospital day, so she would cover the whole ward for the whole day and I think the whole night. So I could be sure that I would deliver with her, which was a big plus because she followed all my pregnancy since like 12 weeks, 5 days. Anyway, so my doctor comes and checks me up again. And actually, I was not at 8 centimeters. I was at like 6.5-ish. So after this checkup, my doctor said, look, it's been 24 hours since your water broke, and I don't want you to be at risk for infection. Parenthesis, throughout the afternoon, as I was already on Pitocin, obviously, my baby's heart rate was very much fluctuating. Like it was normal, and then when I got a contraction, it would dip, and a nurse would come to the room and monitor it, and then she was like, okay, let's stop your Pitocin. And then after a while, okay, let's start it again. And then after a while, it would happen again, like the baby's heart rate would drop. So they would stop the Pitocin again and they would start it again. And so my doctor, given this situation, it had been already 24 hours since my water broke. All this heart rate thing was happening with my baby. And she said, look, let's just do a C-section. It's way safer this way. Like we waited, we tried, it's not gonna happen. You're stuck at 6-something centimeters. And I'm like, okay, let's get the C-section. Like by that time I was also already kind of not bored, but you know, nothing was happening, nothing was progressing. I had come to terms with the fact that C-section would become a reality. So I was like, okay, doc, let's do it. So at that point, they had the anesthesiologist come to ask me some questions. They started preparing the operating room. They started preparing me for the operating room, although I don't exactly remember what that entailed. I was pretty much set because I already had my epidural set up, and for a C-section, if it's a scheduled C-section or you don't already have an epidural set up, they put a spinal anesthesia. If you already have an epidural, they simply put more drugs or like more and different drugs to completely numb you, but they put it in your epidural, so like they don't poke you another time. Because your epidural is an actual like catheter which is continuously fed with medication. Ivan had to pack all our stuff from the labor and delivery room, and they had him wait outside the operating room as they were preparing me for the surgery. They gave him, you know, scrub, mask, and they invited him into the operating room when I was already hooked to the operating table. I was immobilized. There was a screen put in front of me so I couldn't see what was happening at the actual, you know, surgery site. And Ivan was supposed to stay on my side of the sheet, of course, like on the side with my head, basically. Although I was very chill with the idea of a C-section, I had never had a major abdominal surgery, which is what a C-section actually is. So when I was in the operating room and they were preparing me and they had put the screen in front of me, I started freaking out because I'm like, okay, this isn't supposed to hurt at all. I am already numb. The anesthesiologist was making tests on my arms, not on my arms, on my arms, but I think also on my leg or something like that. So like on my arms, I was supposed to feel like pain, and on my leg, nothing, just pressure. And they were perfect, like I wasn't feeling anything. The anesthesia was working. I was completely numb. I couldn't feel like more than half my body. But I was freaking out because, you know, the idea that they have to cut through your skin, your abdominal muscles, your uterus, and then get to the baby and then, you know, wiggle the baby out of your uterus, I was completely freaking out. And I remember I was asking, is my husband here yet? Is my husband here yet? Where's my husband? So they did invite him in, but I think when they invited him in, I was already cut. I think the incision was already made. I had told my doctor to not tell me what she's doing. Like I was like, don't tell me anything. I don't want to know when you're cutting. Nothing. And I think actually the actual cut was done by like the second hand doctor or something like that. I don't know if my main doctor did it. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. So okay, sure enough, my husband was at my side. And yeah, in I think 10 to not even 15 minutes since he got into the room and until they said, oh, look, what a wonderful baby or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is what it is. And then I was like, why is it so quiet? Why am I not hearing the baby scream or something? Because, you know, I knew from movies and videos and like the medical practice that the baby is supposed to cry when he's born, right? But my baby was not doing anything. And they were like, no, it's okay, everything is okay. And then I heard some like, something super, super low voice crying. I think, if I remember well, the baby was quite, not distressed, but, you know, after so many hours of labor, not progressing, he was already quite low. He was not engaged in the birth canal, but he was quite smooshed, let's say. So I think his initial APGAR score was something like 7 because he didn't cry right away, he didn't move that much, and then after 5 minutes he got to a 9. By the way, don't get all obsessed with APGAR scores like I was, because I freaked out when I heard my baby's APGAR scores. Like lower than 10 APGAR score doesn't mean that your baby is going to be sick or retarded or anything. It's just, you know, to assess the state at birth, like how responsive, how many movements, color, something like that. Anyway, then they, you know, put him on a table, they cleaned him a little bit, they, I guess, took his vitals, or I don't even know what they did because I didn't see anything. They wrapped him in a hospital swaddle blanket and they put a little hat on his head. By the way, did you notice that every single hospital in the United States has the same baby hats and the same two designs of swaddles. One is with the ducks and one is with the little feet. Just pay attention to other birth story videos and you'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, then after like, let's say 5 minutes on doing stuff to him, they finally put him on my chest and I got to see him for the first time. And I remember it was the most surreal feeling I had in my entire life. I was like, this is my baby. This is our baby. Oh my God. Should I be laughing? Should I be crying? Oh my God, there's like so many emotions and so much new. Like it was this human being that came from inside of me, or like from nowhere basically, because it was from behind the screen. And this was my son, and it was just surreal. This is the best word that I can use to describe that feeling. He was all quiet and like looking around with like his eyes were like this. He was all like, you know, a bit purplish still. Luckily, he was clean. Okay, side note. Babies come covered in this vernix substance that is kind of like a yellowish, whitish, cheesy, kind of greasy substance that covers them when they are in the womb in the last, you know, weeks or so. And my greatest fear was that I would see him covered in all this gunk, basically, and that I would be like, But luckily there was none of that because they had cleaned him. So he was nice and clean, albeit a little bit purple, and just so adorable. And he was there on my chest, and I was like, what do I do with him? Because one arm was immobilized, while the other one was like, I think, semi-immobilized. And I was like, oh my God, my baby. As this was happening, I think they started stitching me up. And another side note, so I didn't feel any pain during the actual surgery and process of them taking the baby out of my uterus, which is not instantaneous. Like, it takes a bit of like tugging and pulling and wiggling to take him out. But I did feel like they were pulling my organs, basically. Like they were, I felt like someone was elbow deep inside of my abdomen and just like doing stuff around and like pushing my lungs up and pushing my stomach and like pushing and pulling everywhere. It was very, very weird. Not painful, just weird. I was like, So yeah, this is how a C-section feels like. As the baby was on my chest, they started stitching me up and, you know, cleaning the whole site, I guess, or I don't know, just finishing the surgery somehow. Fun fact, the second-hand doctor, the assisting surgeon or something like that, was speaking Romanian. He was from, I think, an Arabic country, but he had studied in Romania in the 80s for like a long time. And then I think he also worked in Romania. So yeah, random fact. By the way, yeah, I'm Romanian. So the fact that someone in my birth team spoke Romanian was very random, given that we live in Houston, but there's that. After the surgery was all done, they moved us to a recovery room where I spent the next couple of hours. And this is also where I had my golden hour, where they put the baby on my chest, skin to skin, and they waited for him to start latching on my boob. What I wasn't expecting about that golden hour was for my arms to be completely jelly. I felt like I didn't have any force in my arms, and like I was supposed to hold the baby, like I was laying on the bed and I was supposed to hold the baby like this, and I felt like I just couldn't hold him right because I felt like he would fall because my arms were so heavy and so devoid of any force to hold him. So Ivan had to help me hold the baby. He was checked for like ties, tongue ties, like, or lip ties, and he didn't have any ties. The latch was perfect, so that was out of the way. After these 2 hours, they took us to our actual like boarding room, which was supposed to be the room we were in until we would be discharged. At this point, I was still under anesthesia. I think my anesthesia started wearing off or wore off maybe like 6 hours later. Oh, by the way, at this hospital, the baby rooms with you. They encourage mom and baby to room together to, encourage bonding and feeding and breastfeeding and, all the good stuff. So you're put into the room. I think I got some sleep for the first time after like more than 24 hours. Nurses would come from time to time to check up on me. By the way, I had a catheter in my bladder. After a few hours, maybe 12, or maybe the next day, I don't even remember. At some point, they did take away the catheter, but that was only after they asked me to start walking. I think they asked me to get out of bed and start walking pretty early on. So I did that. There were no issues. What was an issue though was getting into bed and getting out of bed. Because the hospital bed is like, I don't know, higher, and because it has this edge, it was the most uncomfortable thing for my incision, which was still hurting, of course, as soon as the anesthesia were off. I was given painkillers. One was, I think, oxycodone, and the other one was Motrin, which is like a high dose of ibuprofen. Is I think 600 milligrams of ibuprofen. My initial plan, of course, was to exclusively breastfeed, so I didn't have any bottle feeding items, and I was solely basing my plan on naturally having all the colostrum in the world and like my milk coming in. And although I didn't have like a clear, understanding of what the exact day my milk would come in, also because it varies from person to person. So we did this whole like colostrum thing, and we put the baby on the breast every time he was asking for it, and it seemed to be going well. I also expressed some colostrum, and like I filled up some syringes to give the baby in his mouth, which was also something that worked. At this point, it was Wednesday. Ivan's family came to visit us and the baby. First his parents, and then his brother and his sisters. And the plan was that we would be discharged on Thursday. But then they ran some tests on the baby and saw that his bilirubin levels were dangerously high. Bilirubin is this substance that is in baby's blood, and it has to be processed, I think, by the liver. And if it's not processed, the baby will turn yellow, which is also known as jaundice. So they decided to not let us go home on Thursday because they wanted to monitor the baby. And if his bilirubin levels would be as dangerously high, they would keep him in the hospital and put him under the lamp, because this lamp thing is a treatment for jaundice. So on Friday morning, so now we are on Friday, August 26th, which was the actual date of my induction. On Friday morning, they ran the test again for his bilirubin, and it was okay-ish. So they let us go. And also I had the homework to schedule the pediatrician appointment, the first newborn appointment, for Monday. Other facts that happened during our post-birth hospital stay: for example, we had to monitor the poopy diapers because the baby has to have his first poops. By the way, the first poops are completely black. It's called meconium. It is the weirdest thing. And I have to say kudos to my husband, because I think he changed the first 6 diapers before I actually took the courage to change my first diaper. Okay, this being said, all in all, I think this was a very positive experience. I don't have any birth trauma. I didn't feel that much pain. The pain I felt after the birth was managed with painkillers, also after we got home. So all in all, I can say that this was a very good experience for me. I definitely feel like I got one level up in womanhood, although I didn't go through like the pains of labor or anything like that. I have to end my video here, but please stay tuned for the next one, which is my thoughts on motherhood and life with a newborn. And I think that one will also have a guest star, which is my husband, because we're going to talk about that together. It's not going to be only motherhood, but also parenthood. So until next time, bye-bye.